Well, to hear a little more from manufacturers, I was joined earlier by Sue Morphet, the chair of Manufacturing Australia. Sue Morphet, welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Chicky.
Well, a national emergency, you're calling it, $28 billion in economic value under threat and 200,000 jobs too. Now, that's quite a big number, almost 9% of manufacturing. Where do you get that number from?
I get the number because we've done some significant research throughout the companies involved in Manufacturing Australia. I've pulled it together. It's the jobs associated with the companies that will not be able to tolerate a tripling of gas prices or indeed an inability to secure long-term contracts. So they will lose workers, they'll have to reduce their supply, they'll have to reduce their production, but also so will the affiliated businesses around them.
You talk to manufacturing companies all the time. What is the situation for companies now looking to get a contract for gas supply?
They basically can't. The big companies can't get contracts out further than 2 years, and most of them need to plan 4 and 5 and 8 years out so that they can build their plans, understand what their production can be. So it's a real issue for them, and where they can get them, they get them at prohibitively high prices.
Now, APPEA, the peak body for the gas companies, have cranked everything up. Their campaign warns of anti-gas misinformation. I guess that's you guys amongst other people. Yeah. And they say you will jeopardise 150,000 jobs and $40 billion in annual exports.
We're not anti-gas, and I think that's something that needs to be made quite clear. We are very pro-gas. We just need a domestic market satisfied. If you don't look after the domestic market at the same time as the export market, we will lose domestic value add as well as the domestic jobs. The first thing we need is for all new gas projects that we hold some of the gas for domestic use, and all extended gas projects we hold some of the gas for domestic use.
Now, this is for new gas projects, because it would be impossible, presumably, to unwind the big contracts that are already in place.
If there is an emergency, the government will have no choice. If we act now, the government will be able to do something about it, and we will not have the emergency that is quite likely to occur.
So when we're talking about a new project, that would also include, presumably, some of the gas in northern New South Wales that the gas industry knows is there, but is not yet a formal project.
Sure. But even the ones that are formal projects, as they extend, we should be able to hold some of that gas. There are also tenements that have been given the okay to go ahead that aren't being mined. If we can get the governments, either state or federal, to release those for domestic use, and we can do that quickly, and then we will not have to worry so much about tapping into the new liquid natural gas trains. The most important thing we have to do, and very quickly, and I mean weeks, not months, is we have to get government, gas producers and gas users together in the same place at the same time to resolve this issue.
Well, you're going to have a job because the gas industry is coming out and resisting your proposal strongly. And somebody like Grant King from Origin would say that companies had claimed for decades that they would build more manufacturing facilities if gas was cheaper, but had never done so. And protectionism simply doesn't work.
This is not protectionism. These are companies that have been able to cope with high costs of employment, high costs of environmental regulation, all the things that make Australia a high-cost base to be able to build anything in. They've dealt with all that, but they've built their industries on affordable, competitive energy to enable them to compete against countries that have very low costs where we've got high costs. And now what we're doing is we're asking those very efficient businesses who would always be looking to reduce their energy costs to be able to deal with what will be quite a prohibitive hurdle.
You say that Australia is the only country in the world that allows unrestricted exports of gas, but this is another very complicated area because both Manufacturing Australia and APPEA on the other side are using the same countries as examples to suit their argument. I'm thinking the industry, for example, is saying the United States and Canada have no government intervention. Holland, Norway, that they actually have wholesale gas prices which are set by the market.
But, Tiki, they do have government intervention. The USA has only just allowed export of gas. Up until now, all gas produced in the USA has been kept for local manufacturing.
But they would argue
use.
that actually that's because the export market hasn't been developed yet. They haven't built actually their export facilities.
Either way, they still have needed to go to Congress to get the okay to be able to export the gas. Canada do exactly the same thing. They have a national interest test. If it is in the national interest that we can export, you can export from Canada. In the meantime, if it's not, it stays there for Canadian domestic use. The same with Qatar, the same with Israel.
Would you not be happy with a national interest test? That's something that the AI group is pushing.
That's what we're asking for. But we can't wait a long time. So what we're saying is, number one, ring fence the problem. Put a fence around it and say, we have a problem that's going to be impactful within 2 years. In 2 years in business is no time. So let's sort that out now. Where is the gas going to come from to look after industry between the 2 years, like 2015 through to 2020.
But you're asking for more than a national interest test. You're asking for a domestic allocated reservation, aren't you?
We're asking for a domestic market to be developed. And it may well be that some of the tenements are actually taken and developed and used specifically for domestic markets, and they can be done by second-tier providers, not necessarily the big global gas players. And that would do our market the world of good, because then we would build a second tier in. We'd have the big players who would be doing the big projects, the big export trains, and then we would have our second tier who would be able to look after and develop a domestic market. Their cost base would be different, their outlook would be different, we'd be able to have our prices working, and we would have a very, very good outcome. But we can't get that outcome without government intervention, at least in the instance of sitting down with the parties involved in the industry and developing an outcome.
All right. Well, Kevin Rudd has recently talked about high electricity prices and gas reform on the top of his 7-point list. Now, presumably that does not actually mean an allocated domestic reserve, even though it appeared, I thought that's exactly what he meant.
We did. We had a moment of excitement there when he said that, but nevertheless, what we do need is we want people to sit up and realise that there's a problem. And I am sure if parliamentarians and voters and workers and families all realised that there are so many jobs at stake, there is so much added value at stake, and there's also so many households are going to have to pay so much higher prices.
How do you think you're going to go during this campaign? Because at the moment, the federal government and all the eastern states' governments are not supportive of your position, I don't think.
Probably not, but they may well be when they really look hard at this. And our job, we haven't got the sort of money that the big gas companies have got to push this barrow. We run manufacturing businesses. So our job is to bring this problem to the attention of governments and other industry players and bring them to the table and see if we can get a solution. That's the best thing that we can do.
Sue Morphet, I'm sure it'll be an issue during the campaign. Thank you very much for bringing it to us.
Thank you, Tiki.